All right, so I think what we're going to do is just wait another minute or two because I know the main stage was just wrapping up. So we'll give it about 1 minute and 30 seconds, and then we will get things going. Actually, Nick in the chat, that makes 3 Nicks with you here joining us. So we were Nick squared. I guess we're going to have to be Nick cubed now.
Just taking over the world one Nick at a time.
Right? Oh, we plan on getting as punny as possible. Yeah, throw in any additional puns into the chat as well as we're going along, please. And I guess that is one point. We do want to make this as sort of collaborative as possible, right? This is not just sort of a session of dumping information onto you guys, but also we want you guys to feel free to raise your voices up a little bit, join in the conversation. And no, well, I guess I would be Nickelodeon and Nick N would be Nick Jr.
Oh, I'll take it. The other Nick could be Nick at Night.
There we go. All right, so I guess my 90 seconds has surpassed. So let's go ahead and get started. And as people trickle in, they're not going to miss much on sort of the upfront because we're going to just run through a couple of quick slides. I don't want to kill everybody with death by PowerPoint or any of that. So again, thank you guys very much for coming. And what I would love to see actually is while I go through some introductions, because we're kind of representative a little bit of across some different locations, right? If you guys can drop in, just generally about where are you, what country are you in, what region are you in, just so that we can get a good sense of kind of who's here. It's one of those hard things, right? When you're doing all this digitally, it's hard to interact with people and get a good understanding. Whoa, look at those comments flying, love it. All right, so hi everybody, my name is Nick Barron. I am the Director of Partner Enablement over here at Contentstack. What that basically means is I am the super nerd attached to our Catalyst team or our partner team. Joining me today as well is Nick, Nick Nguyen. He is the solutions architect and what we call our customer hype man.
That's me.
He is also a developer by nature and just a very energetic guy. And joining us, our special guest for the day is Tim Benix. He is the principal developer advocate over at one of our strategic partners, a company called Uniform, which does some pretty incredible stuff in the personalization space. And we're gonna get into a lot of that as we move forward. So let's go ahead here and figure out how many screens I've got going on at the same time. Cool, there we go. So just what our agenda for the day is real quick. We're going to do some housekeeping and some prerequisite stuff. Normally during a conference presentation, this is the part where I would point out where the emergency exits are and where the restrooms are. Since most of us, I assume we are at home, you should probably know where the restroom is and how to get out of your own house. If not, I honestly can't help you with that. Then after we jump through some of those things, we're going to figure out what is Contentstack, why are we talking to you guys today, and then we'll move swiftly into why we at Contentstack love Gatsby and why it's a reciprocal kind of relationship. Then we'll move directly into architecture. We'll look at some diagrams and see kind of how different technologies fit in place with this sort of architecture that we're talking about today. And then we're going to take a quick look, a hands-on look at Gatsby Cloud's incremental building with headless content powering it. So that should be pretty fun. Hopefully you guys are going to get to see some things that you're not able to or haven't seen yet, aside from some sessions yesterday. Then once I've done all of that talking and you guys are like, man, I'm going to be so sick of this guy, we will switch immediately over into the interactive workshop where you will be building a website with us that will be leveraging Gatsby and Contentstack. And then once we've got the sort of the meat and potatoes, the foundation there, we're gonna pass things over to Tim over at Uniform, and he's going to help you guys kind of understand how do we start doing hyperfast personalization at scale with statically generated sites. So super cool, super fun, super interesting, and I'm going to use the word super like 50 more times today, and that'll make sense a little bit later. So First bit of housekeeping, we have taken a bunch of code to help kickstart things, right? And we've pushed this up to our Gatsby starter app for Contentstack. You will see some links popping up in the chat in just a minute, but some things that we do need, and I'm assuming most of you guys have this in play, is Node.js and the Gatsby command line interface, right? So super easy, npm install g Gatsby CLI. And 2 links, you can either grab these as these bit.lys that we've put up here, or I believe somebody's going to be posting these into the chat in the session as well, so you can click them and not have to try to figure out what's on my screen. But that is bit.ly/cs, as in Contentstack, Gatsby21. So that top link there will take you directly to this repo. And then underneath that is bit.ly/cs Gatsby account, and that will take you. Is the second one supposed to say, oh man. So that's why I filled out for sure when I was doing the poll, how have you spelt Gatsby wrong? I for sure did. And you know what? Since I'm the one who generated those links, you can sure bet that they're wrong as well. So yeah, I would highly suggest clicking the ones that Gall just posted in the chat. So yeah, things are going great already. But if you click on those, they will take you one to the repo, and also to a simple Google form. The reason that we're asking for this information in a Google form is so that we can get you guys stood up with a Contentstack instance, right? So that you guys will be able to actually access the system and then tie that together with your local Gatsby build environment as well. It looks like we are getting. We've got some issues with the links, so let me I'm going to click all over the place. I will put these in here. Just make sure these work, right? Here. Get rid of the bit.ly part. Here is the link to the repo and the link to the Google Doc. Cool. So hopefully those work for you guys. So go ahead, take a minute while I kind of continue talking here about some other things, and make sure you get those things set up. Those are sort of the most important things. And Sasha, thank you, worked. Cool. All right, so we got links that work. We can move past that ridiculous slide. So I guess a couple things then that I just wanted to talk through our agenda is, what is Contentstack? Why are we here talking to you guys today? So we are a headless content management system, so very focused in sort of the what we call the mock architecture, which is very akin to the Jamstack. So for us, mock is microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless. So we actually helped found the Mock Alliance as well, which is a bunch of different headless organizations that all kind of work together to tout that same sort of messaging. But the idea being is that the way in which everything works for us is, you know, we're very developer centric in the fact that everything that you get access to is going to come through the API, right? So whether you're pulling down content or information or pages or whatever the structures are going to be, you can then take that and pass that to whatever UI that you want, right, for that front end rendering. So in our case today, we're going to be looking into how we can do that through something like Gatsby, go figure. And then that is going to kind of go through the entire build process, and we'll see that as well going through into Gatsby Cloud as well, like I mentioned. But more importantly is that since it's API first, and we're not looking at this as a web content management system, right? But instead a content management system, we can repurpose that across all these different channels like mobile, AR, VR, voice, in-game experience for some of our big gaming customers, right? So a lot of different ways to reuse and repurpose that same information. And what you guys will see is the way that we do that in the interface is by, you know, removing things that are very web-centric, but still giving the editors and the the marketers the ability to do things, give them a lot of freedom, but we as technologists, right, still get to put a lot of control, and we get to assert a lot of that control to make sure that things continue to work and we don't end up with, sort of fragmented HTML or, channel specific code and language moving forward. So you guys will see how a lot of that works and how we can repurpose a lot of those neat structures in a very kind of friendly and intuitive UI, but then also with, the sort of developers, us being at the heart of things, we need to be able to do this from a whole bunch of perspectives, and I'll show you some of those in a hot minute. But one of the things that makes any kind of headless platform, and this happens to be our slide just because, we are an organization, right? But this applies to anybody in this kind of headless space, is you are as good as your ecosystem of connections, right? So we provide, best in class world, amazing, content management systems, but what really separates us is our ease of integration and our ability to communicate with all these different players. And the same is true for a lot of folks. And this is what that mock architecture, that Jamstack kind of way of thinking really empowers us to do as developers, is to be able to pick and choose what we need to use today based on the business or the client's needs, right? And those things change. They change pretty quickly. What somebody's marketing plan today is, it's going to be different in 5 months. It's going to be different in 5 years, right? So we need to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success and that we're able to kind of change quickly, we're able to change successfully, and we're able to change without strife. So having platforms like Gatsby, like Contentstack, like Uniform, like a lot of the other folks that you see here, it really allows us to be able to pivot for whatever we need to put in place to make sure that the experience that the end users are getting is top notch. So I guess my main point here is let change be your superpower. As developers, we have a tendency to sit there and think, change is going to come down the line. It's going to cause friction. It's going to be difficult. If you architect things correctly, and if you follow these sort of principles of Jamstack and mock architecting, then we don't really need to worry about that, right? Because it becomes very easy to decouple one thing and recouple its replacement. A little bit of, I guess, accolades for ourselves, a little pat on the back, you've got to do this when you're doing a presentation, is even though we are a, Contentstack's been around for 60 years, but in earnest, we've been our own standalone company for just a couple of years. The latest Forrester report came out for agile content management systems, and this is the first time that we were actually in one of these reports, and we did phenomenally, right? So we're categorized as a strong performer, got the highest score in channel support across every vendor that you see here, and got the highest scores possible in a bunch of those other things on the right-hand side. I just wanted to show you this to sort of validate that we kind of know what we're talking about. And we are an engineering-first company, so we've put all of this thought and dedication into building this platform over years and years and years, and have now really kind of come out into the marketplace to start empowering brands from a EXP perspective as well. And I love this quote from the Forrester report, and it doesn't just apply to us, but this is great for anybody who's here, right? Anybody who's thinking about these decoupled sort of strategies of development, is that you need to look for vendors that support your technical users with headless first tooling and the right APIs. But you need to make sure you're not doing that at the expense of your business users. If we forget about the marketers and we forget about the editors and we forget about the people who actually have to use the UI of these tools, then we've got all sorts of problems. We're going to get friction. They're not going to want to, have the positive user adoption. They're going to blame us as techies, right? It's going to become our fault. Usually that's the way things kind of fall downhill. So I love this quote. It kind of resonates with me personally. So moving right along. Why does Contentstack love Gatsby? Why do we gel so well together? Why have we done all these, cool, fun, exciting implementations together? Well, because we together give maximum performance without maximum effort. So with things like all of our pre-built integrations, hosting options like Gatsby Cloud or Vercel or whatever you want to use, you can get an omni-channel experience up and running in very little time with very little effort. So we always want to be, getting that maximum performance out, and certainly performance at scale as well, which we'll get into in a minute. Why Do we also love Gatsby? Because infrastructure is expensive, right? I mean, I remember, I don't want to date myself and tell you what version of Windows Server I remember having to set up and install for the first time, but it's a ways back, right? And as computing power increases and things become auto-scaling and all that kind of stuff, we want to move away from these dedicated systems. Gone are the days where people are, ultra nervous about the security impacts of things like the cloud. Oh, if I put something in the cloud, I'm going to lose access to it. I think the resilience is now kind of spoken for itself. So if we can keep things light and we can keep them flexible, we can pivot very easily, right, between these different kinds of things that we need to bring into the ecosystem. So being able to be flexible, that's a huge value to us. And being able to do that while keeping costs down is just great as well. But not just flexibility from the ability for us to go to different clouds and deploy in different ways and, sort of use the latest and greatest infrastructure that's available, but also being able to do that in that true sort of connected ecosystem of different technologies and different sort of best of breed solutions that really laser in on an amazing sort of proof point and can deal with that, right? So like thinking about our friends over at Uniform, they're really, really good at what they do and they fit the use cases for a client that we have. So of course we want to bring them in and be able to sort of allow them to jump in there. And that also means as things change, we can add the better versions, right? We don't have to fear things like these monolithic upgrade problems where we're going to get stuck in the past. So this just allows us to be future ready all the time. Also, effortless scale, right? So we as a SaaS platform, we have scaled with some of the largest organizations on the planet, And having incredible features is great, right? So, that's one thing that we bring to the table. We're very feature rich. Everybody loves using our tooling, but also being able to do that at scale. Now that's incredible. If you can get those two things together, you're really looking at the SaaS unicorns that every, sort of organization wants to be. And as we're going to see in a few minutes, right, being able to scale effortlessly, not just from the systems perspective, but also from the hosting perspective, that's going to give us the ability to really kind of blow that scaling opportunity out of the water for us, right? So all the way from Ant-Man all the way up to Giant Man, right? Being able to do that when we need to. A great example of this, right, is a week ago, I think it was now, BlizzCon, Blizzard Activision's, biggest yearly conference, all digital, right? This year, kind of had to be that way. We didn't really notice that their conference was getting billions and billions of API calls an hour more than we were used to seeing. And I think that's a testament to how well these different platforms are architected and how well these different ecosystem players, when they're designed for scale, when everyone that's working together is designed for scale, why those things can be so successful. So that's just a fun little tidbit. It was only till after the fact we noticed, and it was, oh wow, that's we hit all of our internal records all in the quarter of the opening remarks. That was pretty fun. And then the last thing to talk about why we are such Gatsby, fan folks is the security that is just natively kind of existing in the static site generation world, right? So, we've got all our SOC 2 certifications and all of that kind of stuff as a platform and as a software as a service side. But then also when you couple that kind of world-class security requirements checking with the ability to have static site generation, it truly just ties up your back end and your front end so well from a security perspective that it just really leaves you with the right defense at the right time to sort of stop any of those negative actors, right? And I mean, just when you kind of think about it in the terms of the scalability and the size of that, hoping that some of you guys listened into the session that SAP hosted yesterday, where they sort of talked about some of these. I know the recordings will be available, so just a little plug over there for you guys. All right, here is a quick little architecture diagram, because who doesn't love an architecture diagram? And I promise we're almost to the end, guys. Thank you very much for holding on so far. But let's just run through this real quick, right? So this is the architecture diagram of what we're going to be looking at today. So this is now starting to become relevant to the actual workshop and the exercise that you guys are going to go through, right? So over on the left, we've got the non-Gatsby related SaaS stuff. So the first thing that we've got there at the top is we've got Uniform, which as you can see is connected directly into Contentstack. So Uniform is going to hold and manage all of our personalization experiences. Contentstack is coupled directly with that to map things like the intent of content to the personalization experiences that folks in or that are being stored and managed in Uniform, right? And when things change in Contentstack, a few different things are going to happen. One, that's going to any sort of structural change, right? So a content type change. We're going to push those changes out to GitHub. We're going to do things like say when a content change happens, we're going to send that individual content item over to the Gatsby Cloud. And why do we want to do that in an individual item level? Because Gatsby Cloud gives us something that is just amazing. It gives us iterative builds. So I can start pushing my content changes just like I would in an old school kind of dynamic CMS infrastructure. And I don't have to worry about the front end not updating because Gatsby Cloud now solves for this. So now we're getting the scalability and the performance of the static site. We're getting all of those other benefits, but now we're also getting a level of dynamicism that we didn't have before, right? And that's going to allow us to look at this in two ways. One, we're going to see it from a preview perspective. And two, we're going to see it happen in the live environment. I'm going to show you guys that in just a second. This slide, you don't even have to look at it. Just know that it's here so that when you guys get a copy of the presentation afterwards, you'll be able to go through and click on all these little quick links. I just wanted to put some info together for you guys, but super easy to integrate these technologies together. It really is as easy as 1, 2, 3, and then kind of 4. So you guys can do that at your own pace. And I think we've had enough of one Nick talking in this presentation format, so we are going to jump over and take a look at Gatsby Cloud and Contentstack and how the two of those things are kind of connected together. And then we are going to jump right into some IDEs, and we're going to start typing things like Gatsby Develop. So that will be very short-coming. So thank you, guys. You made it to the end of the PowerPoint. I say give yourself a round of applause. Anytime I get through a PowerPoint, I kind of feel like I've just done something big and important.
Way to kill it, Nick. It was great. I loved it.
All right. Appreciate you, bud. All right. So when we head over to Gatsby Cloud, right? I don't know if you guys have seen this interface, but I've got a little thing for Gatsby Conf running. You can see that it's tied to, actually, let's just open this up. It's tied to my repository. I made a personal one, so it wasn't impacting anything else that was happening. We can see our production builds, but also, and I love this, we can see our CMS Preview URL. So let's go ahead and click this. And what this is going to do is this is the site that you guys are going to be building today. This is the site that we're going to be changing, we're going to be personalizing, we're going to be doing cool stuff with. As you can see, this is on my preview URL, which looks very similar to my production URL, right? So basically 2 iterations of the same site. On this one, you can see I've got my little edit button that when I click that, this is going to take me right into Contentstack so I can see where I need to make my change. Let's say it's on the home page. And let's go ahead and let's just look at this page. What can we change? All right, we got choose the #1 tech consultancy right in the middle. Let's just simply move that to the bottom of the page. Nice and easy change to make, right? So we'll take our tech consultancy, move that to the bottom. Then we're going to click publish here in Contentstack. And now I get to choose which environment I want this to go to. So let's go ahead and just say Gatsby Preview. And I think it's actually important to kind of point out here, right? We can publish this out to different environments, or we could change this so instead of this happening on publish, I could have it happen on update, right? So if somebody just clicked save, the same thing would happen. So I've got a workflow enabled on my production environment, but not on my preview. And the reason why is I want somebody to be able to make a change on preview without having to go through that sort of workflow. And we can now see in real time, or real enough to sorry, I got distracted and was talking. We can see that content is updated here at the bottom of the page. And if we jump into Gatsby Cloud, what we can see is that that's just doing a quick build for us, right, in the CMS preview space. And the great thing here is that's taking like 2 or 3 seconds to do those builds. Where when we look at something like a full site deployment, either we can see that it's still taking just a couple of seconds when it comes from the iterative cloud, or when we have, oops, how if I click the right thing, or if we look at the history here, we can just see what the difference is, right? So when I have a code change or something that requires a full compile, that's taking 22 seconds. It's a really small site, but to the point where we're looking at a factor of 10. So that's pretty huge and pretty important. And now my editors can make these live changes. They can preview them live, and then once they're happy, they could push that through that whole sort of workflow process, get all the approvals in place, and then have that go out to the production environment, which we can also, as you can see here, we're getting these data updates via Contentstack to do those iterative builds as well. So yeah, there you go. So that's just my super quick run through of how Contentstack and Gatsby Cloud all tie together. I guess I will ask if there are any questions before we hand over to other Nick. Or Nick N. That sounds a little less demeaning than the other one.
There's a lot of other Nicks in here. We have Nick Bennix now, so that's a new one.
All right.
Sounds kind of weird, no? Nick Bennix. It doesn't kind of trip over it. Anyways,
I like
continue. I shall be Nick.
All right. So hopefully everybody has had a chance to hit up those links, and I guess I will stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Perfect. So,
all right.
I guess we can transition straight over into the workshop from here. I hope everyone's excited. I'm pretty pumped to see everyone get set up in Contentstack and start, editing content and pushing changes to our Gatsby website. Is there anyone in the chat who has yet to be set up by signing up on the Google form? Or does anyone not have the link to the repository in the chat? Let's see if everyone's in there. Because I will share my screen. And I think we are sharing now. Nick Barron, are we up and running?
Up and running, bud.
Awesome. Well, everyone, today we are going to be creating a marketing website using Gatsby, as Nick Barron showed us earlier with the Gatsby Cloud example. This is a very generic website. It's actually just going to have like a banner image. We have a few modular components here that we are going to be manipulating and changing out different content. And then we will also be building out a new component today that we will build inside Contentstack and then also build out the React component. So to start off, I know the prerequisites said that you need to have Node.js installed in your system and the Gatsby CLI. So if everyone has already done that, I think I will move on from there. We're actually going to be cloning this repository straight out the box. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go to a folder and let's start this clone going. So let's paste this in here. As you can see, it's just a copied command in there. You can type it out yourself if you'd like, but it's git clone and then a repository. And then I'm going to go Gatsby conference as the folder name, and we'll clone it into here. And we will let that run. So let me actually make this a little bigger for everyone. Awesome. So now we have the repository cloned inside of our machine. So I'm actually going to navigate over into that folder for everyone. You can see all the components inside here. And if we go back to our documentation, we want to run the npm package installer to install everything that the repository requires and the project requires. So I will go ahead and type that out. And we will push enter. We'll let it fetch all the packages and let it do its magic. In the meantime, while that's going, I do want to let everyone know that inside the repository, we have this docs section right here. And if you open this folder up, it'll actually bring us to a more in-depth README about everything that's going to be going on during the whole presentation. So if you happen to fall behind, or if you happen to run into errors and you need to see what is going on, you can actually look through here for step-by-step of everything we're going to be covering today.
Nick, sorry to interrupt, bud. Can you zoom in a little bit in your browser? We've got people asking if they can full screen the video, which I do not believe Hopin the platform that's being used allows us to do.
Oh, okay, perfect. So let me see. I scaled up pretty big. Hopefully, is it more legible now?
It sure is.
Perfect. So I guess I'll just start over from the beginning for some people that didn't see. What I originally did was I cloned the repository using git clone and then the link to this repo. And then I navigated into the folder that it resided in. And then I ran npm install, which installed all the dependencies for the project. Perfect. And once we get through that step, from everyone that had signed up through the Google form, you should have received an email that had an activation button on there, so you could actually activate an instance inside of Contentstack. And if you did that after you created a new password and logged in, it should bring you to a screen. Let me see my screen. That is our basically landing or homepage of Contentstack for all your projects. If some of you don't see your Gatsby starter app yet, just give it a few seconds. It's probably just cloning over. So wait about 30 seconds and give it a refresh, and we will move into the project. So I'll just give it a second and let people get their projects cloned over.
Yeah, I mean, so you guys should definitely be receiving that email. It's going to have a big kind of single-click button that's going to allow you to go in. Just make sure you put in a nice, super safe, secure, and awesome password. And I don't think I mentioned this actually during the earlier part, but we're going to keep these up and running for a couple of days. But if you guys wanted these to sort of carry on and continue on after the conference is over, just reach out to us. You can reach out to us via the contact us form on our website or something, and we'll get you guys that up and running for sort of a little bit more persistence so you can play around with it. But just knowing that we have so many folks who have joined up and signed up for this, we will be kind of turning them off a little bit later.
Perfect. And I'm hoping that most of all of you in the chat that are following along now have this stack generated. What a stack is in Contentstack is it basically represents a digital property usually. So whether it's a web page, a mobile application, you could be hosting things on like digital kiosks, things like that. Each one of these projects will represent one of those digital properties. So I'm going to navigate into our website, which is the Gatsby Starter app. I will click Open Stack. And you can see here, this is the dashboard of our project. So the dashboard of the website we are going to be working on. This is generally an overview of everything that has recently been changed to our website. From the content pieces to digital assets. There's a few things on here. Right now, this is all we're showing, but our SDK lets you expand this front page to whatever creative ability you really want, whether it's external integrations with other platforms or internal personalized use cases. If it can be built out in JavaScript, it can basically be integrated here. So very fun, very cool. I'm actually going to just do some navigation through this and show you a few parts that we'll be working in. That way you're familiar with what we're touching and what we're doing as we go through the demo. So just bear with me here. We're going to be working with assets a little bit. So this is Contentstack's internal digital asset manager. We support pretty much all files from MP4, JPEG, PDF, JSON files, you name it. And we do asset organization in a typical file system fashion. We have multiple filtering, tagging, and data options when it comes to helping with that. So that's just the highlight and overview of our internal asset manager. We're actually going to be talking about environments. If you navigate over to our cog, we have environments. I know that Nick Barron covered this in the Gatsby Cloud presentation, but I'm just going to go over a little more. So Contentstack actually supports a multi-environment approach. And what that really means is that an environment really refers to one or more deployment servers or destinations where you're going to deliver your content. So this allows for easy integration for multi-digital platform approach, or simply a staging and production environment. It's very useful, it's very strong, and it's very intuitive.
And I would just add one thing there, Nick. One of the things that's great about this is these are logical environments, right? So these aren't physical servers you need to worry about. And what that means is, if you think about the sort of the life cycle of a piece of content, right? You might have a piece of content that is ready for your partners to view, but you need to make sure it goes through legal and gets more approval and all that kind of stuff before going out to your public website. So you can have one environment for, let's say, your partner portal and one environment for your public website, and allow different people to consume that content, with some level of authorization sitting in front of that. So, it sort of starts to just kind of break open those different ideas from that logical perspective. And that's the big sort of takeaway there, is that you can do a lot with that, not just say, oh, I want to have a staging and a production environment, but now I can start thinking about who's going to consume information and where they are.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. So after environments, we're going to be touching another point that we'll be covering in here that you'll see when we're altering content that we won't necessarily be working in, but I just don't want you to see it and be like, what is this? So I'm going to go to the languages tab. So Contentstack also supports over 200 languages. We provide an easy way to localize content in any region of the world. Our simple approach of localizing individual content pieces based on language makes it easy for all your users to really view content that's relevant to them. If you see I click and create a new language, I can pretty much select any locale across different regions that I will be distributing content to, and this will help us separate content pieces out later on. I won't go too deep into what we can do with languages. I just wanted to show you because you might see it later on. And lastly, on this section, I'm going to be talking about tokens. So we're actually going to be working with tokens today because we're going to need them to deliver our content to our website. So Contentstack has a separation of tokens. We have a delivery token, which is a read-only token to fetch content that's been published to a particular environment using our content delivery APIs. And then we also have management tokens, which are both read and write token. And these can actually be used to manipulate your stack from outside the platform using our content management API, and also fetching content with the content delivery API. So that's just the top level of Contentstack, but now we're going to dig into the actual content pieces and the data we're going to be distributing. So if I navigate over to content, these are actually called content types, each one of these. So we have an author content type, a blog entry content type. And what a content type really is it is a structure or a blueprint of a page or section inside your web property that you're going to display to your users. As we went through the overview of the Gatsby app, we saw that there was a banner image and then multiple components that go down. So each one of those components are going to be resembled here. And then I'm going to navigate into page. This is a content type, so a schema of one of the blocks, and these are going to be the entries, which are basically the actual content pieces that you're going to distribute out to your web page. So if I navigate into our home content type, so inside our home content type, you can see that there's actually like a schema of what our page looks like. Since the screen's a little small, I would do a side-by-side comparison, but it might be a little hard to since there's not a lot of viewing space. So I'll just navigate back and forth between tabs. If I expand out, these are called modular components. If I expand out the first one, you can see that we have an image, some background colors, a title, a description, and all these fields are actually relevant. If I go back in here, so the example, to the fields that are inside our website. So you can see that everything in here, if I go back to this block, this image and background color are specific to this image and background color. You can see that we have banner titles and descriptions and a bunch of other fun stuff in here that are going to be pieces to build out these pages. So now we can go straight into a live example of what we're going to be altering first and how we're going to get this website up and running. So if I navigate back to our code, and you can see that what I started earlier is now finished, which was installing all the node packages. The first step that we're going to take is we're going to first open up the folder that we were in. So let me actually go here and open this up. We will see on the left-hand side at our project navigation, we have an environment.development. This is going to be our configuration file for accessing Contentstack. So I'm going to have you guys open up this file, and you can see we need the API key, the delivery token, and that's pretty much it, as we've hard-coded it in the rest of the variables that you'll be needing. So if you navigate back to our Contentstack app, I want everyone to actually open up this little settings cog, scroll down to tokens, and we will see that we have a development token and a production token. For today's project, we're going to be working in the development token only. So I'm going to have everyone open up this token. And in it, you'll see we have a name for the token, a description if we needed it, and then also the scope. So as Nick Barron was saying, that we have different environments and different content that can distribute to each of those environments. These tokens allow you to distribute content only through these keys to this environment. So we're going to actually take this API key, and we actually have a click to copy function. So we'll copy these. We'll take the API key, and we will remove the hashtag copy from Contentstack interface. And we will then in our API key for this stack. We will then go back to our platform, take our delivery token, and we will do the click to copy function. And once we do that, it'll say copied. We'll go back to our platform, remove the hashtag copy from Contentstack interface section, and then we will paste in that token. And I will save the file using Command S. And so now our environment is all set up. We have all the tokens in place to now fetch content from our CMS. And now we can actually display all that content in our website. So if you are inside the terminal inside your project, after you have set up your tokens and you're ready to go, all we really have to do to fire this website up is type in npm run develop. And then once you have that inside your terminal, we will click return, and this should fire up our project. So if I navigate back and I open up a new tab, it should be found at localhost /8000, and push enter. Should be coming up in a second. And awesome, success. Perfect. So now we have our server up and running. All our content in this web page is being pulled from our stack inside of Contentstack. So no data here is hard-coded in. It is pulled all from within our CMS. And we are ready to go.
Just a quick question, Nick. Mm-hmm. Can you show us where you got your API key and token from again? We were a little quick to run through that, and I see we have at least one question. And if this is anything like my grade school teachings, if one person's got the question, more's got the question.
Perfect. Yeah, of course. So if you are back in your in the Contentstack UI, you want to navigate over to the settings cog over here. And you'll see a list of options from stack, environments, languages. We want to keep going down until you see tokens. When you click on tokens, it'll take you to the page for it. You'll see delivery token section, which should be highlighted. We will now enter the development token, which is what we're going to be working in today. So if you navigate inside this token, you'll get a list of options here, and your API key and the delivery token should be at the bottom of this page. And all you have to do is click to copy on the edge of it, go back into your code base and fill in the API key and fill in the delivery token with the respective values. And then once we have everyone set up and their project up and running, the content link to the project, and everything seems good to go, we'll be working on our first example of manipulating content inside Contentstack and watch it change on our project. Thanks for that, Nick. I don't have the chat open, so I can't see the users that are experiencing delays. Cool. I'll give everyone about another minute or so, and we'll move on to manipulating the content pieces.
And just so you guys know, the reason that we have the different sort of keys for different environments is to add that extra level of security as well, right? So that we can make sure that we've got, one set of authenticated API calls coming from one physical place, right? Like wherever this front end is going to be hosted. In this case, it's on, everybody's development environments. But that helps us, keep things kind of in their lane and in their channel. As well, we do have right around the corner, we're releasing some OAuth support coming out as well, which is going to make the integration into things like the Gatsby Cloud, into Gatsby directly, and all these different things a lot more seamless and easy to accomplish as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nick. Awesome. Well, I think we're going to slowly move on to the content editing portion. So for our first example, we are actually going to be changing some of the content that is displayed here. If you are inside the Contentstack UI, we are going to move over to the content page, and we're going to go into the content type called page. So let's navigate inside. And then we will move into the entry called home. And this is basically our home page. Perfect. So like I said before, we have this idea of modular blocks, and each one of these blocks are a section inside your web page. So I'm going to actually do a little back and forth hopping again so we can all see what's going on. We have the hero banner, which is tied to this top section component right here. So everything you see in the purple area is this first block. So we have create a winning digital strategy for your business. We have the description. We have the call to action to read more. It's all right here inside your page. If I go to the next block and expand this out, we have a section. And inside this block, we have a title, a description, a call to action, and an image, and then a property, an image alignment if I want on the left or right-hand side of the page. If I go back to the page, you can see that we have the left alignment of the image, the title, a description, and a call to action. So each one of the blocks inside Contentstack are going to relate to one of the blocks that you see on this page. And if I collapse these back, we're actually going to do the first demonstration, which is changing the content. So if you want, you can now change the title and the description of your page. So I'm going to change this and say Gatsby Conference. Awesome. And there are just so many Nicks in the chat. So I'm going to change the title and the description of our page, and then I'm also going to change the background color. So the background color can be whatever you want. There is no decision that is chosen for you, so you can just pick your favorite color. I'm going to go with this orange maybe. And then once you have this content manipulated, I'm going to have everyone here click the publish button. So publish means that you are going to send your content live to whatever environment or digital property area you want it to be located at. So when I click publish, you see that we have the development and production servers. For this example, we are only working in development. So I will check that. We have the select languages section. I only went over languages because I wanted you to see this and I knew it might confuse some people. but we will only be going to the master language, which is English for this demo. And we are going to be publishing this content now. We have a section to check for later. And what you can do is you can schedule this entry to go live at a certain date and time zone that you want. This is great for e-commerce sales or product launch dates, or even just landing page launch dates. You can schedule them to be released at a certain time. But for now, we're going to schedule it now. And we will click publish. And on the right-hand side, we can see publish status. I'm going to refresh this. And you can see that this version was published a few seconds ago. If I navigate back to my code, I'm going to rebuild the server. For some of you, it may rebuild automatically because it detects changes. So that is great. I'm just going to rebuild it for these purposes. So let's go back to this, npm run develop. If I run this, it should fire back up the server. And you can see everything is successful. It's launching correctly. If I go back to my page and I refresh, it should now change our background color. It now says that the Gatsby conference is awesome. And there are just so many Nicks in the chats. So you can see how easy it really is to manipulate content with Contentstack and get those changes live. Within a few simple steps, we were able to update content to any environment within a short time. So it's really flexible, and the speed of it is awesome. So now that is the first example, and we've kind of demonstrated it, how it works, and what you really need to do, I'm going to give everyone maybe 5 minutes to get their demos up and running and working, and see if they can get the content changes to their new awesome content. And I'll just start like a little timer over here, so just so we know.
And so just because I'm kind of keeping an eye on the chat, just a couple of notes. One, if you don't see things change, that probably means you didn't restart your local development instance, right? So it's still reading from the cache statically generated Gatsby file. So go ahead and turn over, or open up your CLI, hit Control-C to kill the dev environment, and then do a fresh build or develop there. So that should help folks who are not seeing things change. Gal has actually just put a link in that is going to be super helpful for some of you guys who are looking for things in a little bit more of a written format. We've got a document that will now kind of follow on from the rest of what we're about to do. So we just wanted to do a quick little content authoring experience just so you guys can see how things are going to change. And then that's going to sort of go through the rest of the things that we've got going on. Yes, I also agree. The flexibility and modularity of the stacks is just fantastic. A couple things to note about that, actually. Everything that is stored within that, let's say even that homepage, right, that's made up of these different elements that can be drag and dropped around, because it's quite a flexible content model, right? So as Nick pointed out, we call that a modular section of a content model that allows you to kind of add and remove those cool little elements. Even with all of that flexibility, capability, and iterative ability, I'm just going to add more rhyming words together. All of that information is then stored as JSON and is accessible via GraphQL as well. So there's a lot of good standards that go into play in terms of how that data is stored, how that data is structured, and then how that data can be retrieved. Another thing I wanted to point out is when we were looking at the different sort of tokens, right? So we had our delivery API tokens, and that's what we're using in this case, right, to deliver information down to the client side of things. We also have, as Nick pointed out, the content management API. Anything you see within our interface can be done with the CM API. In fact, we built our interfaces on top of that to make sure that they were robust enough for whatever application somebody else would be using. We also have things like a synchronization API to allow us to sort of publish content into offline states so that we can do things like deploy behind firewalls. So getting into countries where we're not allowed to have dynamic content connections across borders, we can basically clone the entirety of the front end and site to get into those kind of situations. And there's a GraphQL API, there's an image delivery API, so that we can do things like manipulate images from the client side, right? So we can call exactly the version of that image we need without the content author having to manage 20 different versions of the same image, right? So you upload one high-res image in whatever file format you want, and then that's going to come down based on whatever that front end is requesting. So, you know, your mobile app, for instance, is going to know I'm on a slow, terrible network, and you know, somebody else is on a fast network. So those two different things, the application itself is going to be aware of and can request different versions of that image as well. As well as, of course, you know, cropping, rotating, compressing, changing files, file sizes, and all that kind of stuff, and doing things like having different focal points and focusing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like great manipulation with Contentstack, the double APIs and manipulation and things like that. And I know that we kind of covered modular blocks and what they are in Contentstack, just very high. But in the next example, we'll really cover the main purpose of them, why they're important, and how they can really be utilized to grow the flexibility and scalability of your platform. So that'll be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to talk about that a little more. Hopefully everyone here is getting through the first demo track. Thank you, Gal, for sharing the README. Everyone, as I said before, inside that README has the steps that you need to follow that are exactly what I'm saying here, and they should help you get things set up if you are falling behind a little bit, or if things aren't working properly. You can probably just copy some of the code in there and add it in. So we have about 20 seconds left here before we jump into the next example. And we have 10, 9, 8.
Are you actually going to do
6,
a countdown?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right.
Oh,
Oh, we got a giant loop of my video in there.
Oh, that would be, I believe the term is Nickception.
There we go. I'll take it. All right, everyone. So hopefully we got through example 1 and we can move on to the next. And if you haven't, there's still the README in there. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to manipulate the way the content is organized. So you can see we have a section here that's the second component. We have this block that choose the number 1 tech consultates for the second block. And then we have more that follow it. So we're actually going to rearrange each section and show what modular blocks actually can do. So the Contentstack's concept of modular blocks wraps around the idea of giving users the ability to dynamically create and manipulate components on a page on the fly. So like no longer are you bound by the structure of the CMS. Your marketers and content creators can now add, remove, and move content around up and down the page in any fashion they see fit. That's the most optimal performance for your digital property. So on the left-hand side, you can see that we have these rearranging blocks or buttons that you can actually choose and drag sections around and manipulate what content is where. Each one of these expand out to be a content piece on the front end code and on your website. So let's just move, that. And let's go the blog at the bottom. We'll move this down. Oh, did not mean to open the dictionary. This blog down. Remember, you don't have to follow the exact organization of cards that I'm doing. Any order that you want it to rearrange it in will work. And so once you've rearranged some of this content, you can now publish the same thing we did before for the text change and the background color. We'll select development as before. We'll leave English as the language, and we will publish it now. So we will move on and click publish. I will refresh my publish status. You can see that it was published a few seconds ago. We'll go back to VS Code. And I think this actually rebuilt itself, but I'm going to rebuild it anyways, just for the sake of it. run npm run develop. I will hit return. And you can see that the project is starting to build. And everything's successful. So I will go to Chrome, go back to my page. And if I refresh my page, you can see that now it's a completely different layout. We have these scheduled demo cards with us up top. This is still in the same spot. The section has now moved down to the third order. And it's just now it almost is like a brand new landing page. It's completely different. It might perform differently, but the modular blocks give the power to your content creators, the power they need to really redesign a landing page, redesign home pages, anything that you have, without having to reach out every single time they want to make a change to a page. That's not just text or content. And let's see if everyone is able to fire that up and get it started. Just a quick reminder that inside the repository, if we navigate over to docs, you can see the README here, and it has every step that we are going through. So I'm actually going to scroll down to part 2, or actually part 3. No, part 2, my bad. And then go back. So I said before that modular blocks give you the flexibility to rearrange the components, but it's not just that. We actually give them the power to create as many components as they want. So if they wanted more sections, they have to just go in here, and you have already designed the components for these users. So you can just add another section. They can create the content for it, publish it out to whatever digital property they want, and voila, it should be up and running. There's no need to ask a developer to add a new section for them, to add new content. As long as it's, built out correctly, it should render every single block that they create in the order that they create them. So awesome. Nick, how's the chat looking? Any questions going on? Anything we should be looking out for?
I think we are getting most of those answered as they are popping up. If you guys were seeing some issues with dependency problems with your npm install, we just dropped a command in, npm install --legacy-peer-deps. We've seen that work for quite a few folks, so go ahead and give that a try if you're kind of stuck at that stage.
And all this will be available after the workshop. And if it's not working now, everything should be documented enough that you can still work on it and tinker around with Contentstack post-workshop. So if you're not quite at the same step we are at, or if you're just following along, everything will be available after, so you can actually go back through and do it yourself. Awesome. And let's see. I did want to bring up one more thing while everyone's still kind of rearranging that content and waiting for those changes to come live. Inside of our, where was it at? I think it was Hero Banner. Inside of our Hero Banner, I had shown this color picker. And this color picker is a little different because it's not a typical field. You see we have the built-in Chrome color picker or the Mac OS X color picker. Contentstack has this concept of custom fields. And what custom fields really are they let you add and create fields that are out of the normal. So something that's like, a single line, text line, image and files, links, things like that are pretty normal. But if say you wanted to integrate with another business application or design something completely different as a whole, just like the dashboard SDK I was talking about, the extension SDK lets your developers and us take their CMS to a completely personalized and integrated experience with whatever platform it is. So it really gives you the flexibility to turn the CMS into something that's catered to you and your team. And I think that's one of the great things about headless is you're not bound by constraints. There's nothing saying like, this is the platform and this is what you get. It's like, here is the baseline platform. Feel free to build on top of it and make it the best possible platform for you and your team and organization. So very awesome, very cool. Just wanted to do a little elaboration on the fields. So I think at this point, most users should be being done with that step. And I think that we can actually move on to the next step and let everyone kind of see other pieces. So if we go back to our content type by clicking content at the top of the UI, we're actually going to now create a new blog entry. So this is going to show you how content can be rendered on the front end just by creating a new entry. So if we go in here, you can see that there's already 6 blog posts. These are all there and generated for every single one of you. So if you are inside your application, you can see that we have the blogs already rendered here. And they're up and down. So we're actually just going to create a new one. And to do that, all we really need to do is click on New Entry at the top. This will create that skeleton schema for you to start designing a new blog. So once we are in here, we can say title is Gatsby Conference Blog. A random URL, or not a random, a generated URL with whatever style that you want will populate here. So you can change it. If you don't want date, you can change the way this looks. But for now, we'll keep it here. You can see if I clicked on a blog, it should render there, but wait, never mind. We'll go back and we'll just choose an author from the demo. So let's just pick Albert Einstein, because why not? The date that this blog was written. So I'm just going to leave this the standard since it's like right about now. The feature image, and let's go to blogs. And I'm just going to click on this first image. And this will be the featured image that you see on the page. And since I don't have the time to type out a fully fleshed out blog, I'm just going to type something really easy for all of us to understand and very basic. So I'm just going to go, boom, stick with the generics. And then we also have other stuff such as related posts. So anything in here that is relevant to another content, you can choose here. So I'm just going to choose a random 2. And we will add selected entries. And for now, I'm going to skip over the uniform section. Tim Bennix will take us through this later on what this actually means and how it works for personalization. And I'm actually just going to leave most of this other stuff empty. So the SEO, if you really wanted to, you could fill this in, but I'm going to leave it empty for now. And I'm going to publish this content to development as we had before. And we will click publish. Let's keep the same configuration that we had before. Click publish. And it went live a few seconds ago. And I believe our code base is structured to pull brand new blogs that we have already published. So we will go back and rebuild our server, just as we've done before when things were published. And you can see that it has success when building the development bundle. We'll come back and let's just go into the blog. And you can see now I have just created a brand new blog. It was a very simple process of going through and filling out the fields that were necessary for it. It rendered in right away without the need of a developer to add in a new component or a section. I can expand out this blog, and I know it's very small because I just did a generic hello world. I didn't have time to type out something crazy, but that just shows you how easy it is to get new content pieces out there and distributed using Contentstack. It's as simple as clicking a button, which is awesome. No longer do you have to reach out to your development team and say, hey, I've got all this new content. Can you just add it for me? You know, it could take a lot of back and forth talk. Now you just have that simple one click, send it off to your page, and your content is live.
And Nick, just a point. One, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. I have some headset issues. Just as a point, right? So some of the things that kind of cross my mind when I see things like that is, you know, the asset management that we have built into the platform, things like that. This is where that big ecosystem slide that I showed you guys really comes into play. Is any of the controls that you have in a tool like Contentstack, right? It doesn't have to be us. It can be any sort of headless provider. You should be able to then go in and put in things like a custom field. And we're actually going to see one of these. Tim is going to demo how we connect with the uniform application shortly. But those custom fields should also then allow you to do things like connect to a brand folder, a cloud area, or some other, you know, document asset management that your organization or one of your client organizations might have. So it's that sort of interface where we want to be able to allow editors to interact with other systems, but without ever having to leave the one that they're actually in, right? The best editor experience is when someone's using two systems at the same time and has absolutely no idea that it's happening.
Awesome. And I know there was some questions about like automating this workflow. And I know that we showed the Gatsby Cloud and those incremental builds before, and the way we can tie into things and automating this, instead of having to go back and rebuild our project manually in Visual Studio Code every single time, Contentstack has the webhook functionality like most platforms nowadays. And with webhooks, you can actually set it up so that when any new content is distributed or, you know, built out and you need it to go live, you can say, once this content is published to the digital property that I want, can you please send it off to, say, Gatsby Cloud? And it'll do one of those incremental builds and fetch the new content that is now available. And so when it hits those build processes, you know, thankfully for the incremental build, it's super fast. It doesn't rebuild the whole project. It just only builds out the pieces that are needed.
Yeah, and that's 100%. That's the same functionality that we used in that sort of web hooking into Gatsby Cloud. We just need one platform, in this case, the headless CMS that you're using, to tell Gatsby or Gatsby Cloud or whatever, you need to rebuild this thing or rebuild to the whole thing if it's a big enough change, right?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so hopefully most of us now have designed a piece of new content for the blog. And if you haven't, you can always go back later and do it. So you can always have the option if you just want to move forward, because this part won't be affected, or the next step that we do is not affected by if you have completed entering a new blog. So I'm actually going to move on to our last example. I know it's already 10:30 a.m. here on the Pacific side of things, so I'm actually going to move forward so we have enough time to complete the last workshop example. And in this next piece, we're actually going to be navigating back to our content page. We're going to hop back into the page component or content type, and we will go back to the home page. So we've been doing a lot of content manipulation, changing things within Contentstack, but how does that really, you know, get turned into code? How does the code fetch this new piece of content? What if I want to design something new that you guys haven't already built for us? Well, that's what we're going to be doing here. We had that modular block section with all these little pieces that were built out for you. But now you're going to be modifying one of these pieces to add in 2 new fields and then render that component with the React component that you build on the front end. And we're going to walk you through that. So right now we have a custom section. And I want everyone to add one of these to your project. Inside of it, you see that we have a few fields: the title H2, title H3, a call to action, an image alignment, and that is it. What we're missing from this is we want to add an image and a description of what this block is. So we're going to take a little step here that's going to be different than usual. We're going to navigate back out to our content section by clicking content. And we're going to we can proceed anyways, which is fine. We're going to highlight this page content type again. And on the right-hand side, you can see these three little dots. And these three little dots let us alter the schema of this content type. So if we click on this and we edit the content type, this is our content type builder. This is how you build out your components for your pages and how you can add fields that are relevant to your page and new fields that you need to make and create new things. But for this demo, we're actually going to stick within these page components only. Inside here, you can see these are different blocks that we are creating in that page. I want everyone to scroll all the way to the right. I know it might be a little tedious to keep on clicking, but we'll get all the way over to our custom section. Inside the custom section, as we went through before, we saw a title H2, title H3, the call to action, and the image alignment. What we are missing out of there is a description box and a file. So what I'm going to have everyone do now or after is click on multi-line text, and let's add it into our custom section. We'll rename the display name to description. This is very important as you want this unique ID to be exactly description. It should copy right over for you, so you don't have to do any manipulation to this. Just make sure you spell display name correctly.
Don't try to make it like a short link that some guy named Nick put up there and spell the word Gatsby wrong. Make sure that and if you need to, you can always copy and paste it from that that document that's referenced in the GitHub.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nick. We will also be adding a file. This file will reference an image that's located in Contentstack's Digital Asset Manager. So if we drag this file over, and we will rename this to image. So remember, just type image correctly, as you don't want a typo because the field will have an incorrect UID. And once you've added these two new fields and you've completely changed the way this content type looks, we're going to click Save and Close. This will save all your changes to your skeleton of what that content type should look like. And those fields will now be available to you when you're designing and adding new content. So we'll save and close. And now we will navigate back into our page content type. We will navigate into the home entry for our home page. And we will scroll down and we will add in that custom section. Now in our custom section, you can see that we have the new fields that we added that are available for the users to add content to. So I will go in and enter some information and go back to our basics, say Gatsby conference custom section. The description, I'm going to say a new awesome component that I built in Contentstack. For image, I will go to the uploads, and these are folders that we have designed for people to have. So I'm actually just going to click on home page, and I'm going to add in just this very generic image. Number one, add selected asset. And now I have linked in one of the assets from our DAM into the content type. So that way it can be referenced on the front end and we can have this beautiful image displayed. And then we'll move on to title H3. I will do, let's just go a subsection title, something generic. The call to action, I'm going to say this is Contentstack. And we'll go this as Contentstack's main page. And I'm going to leave image alignment on the left-hand side. Remember, all this content can be generated by yourself. You don't have to follow the exact content that I'm putting in. So just make it fun and pretty for whatever purpose that you want. And we will click publish. We will click on development as we are going back to that development environment that we have set up. We're going to leave the language and the publish as now. We want to keep these default configurations. And we will click publish. And as said before, this will distribute content to our development tokens in which our front-end app can now pull from. So the content should be updated. And now it was published a few seconds ago. So if we go back to our code, if we tried running this now, it wouldn't really work because that component hasn't been added into the code base. So we're going to actually have to do a few steps that'll actually build out a React component and render it to our front end. Inside our repository in the README, on part 3 is where you'll kind of want to set this up. So the first thing we really need to do is add the new GraphQL query to pull that new custom section, because as of now, we don't have that data. The content isn't being fetched, so it cannot be displayed. If I go into our source and go into our pages in index.js, this is where our main query is coming from. Inside index.js, you can see at the bottom of the page, we have the GraphQL query, and it's pulling everything from the Contentstack page component, or content type, sorry for that. Inside the page components, you can see the blocks that we were working with earlier. Hero banner is right here. So you can see how this block is being pulled. Our team, the rich text, the main section with the image alignment, as we saw earlier, and a few others. In the documentation, it says scroll to line 159 and add the following code into that section. So if we scroll a little farther down, it should be right after Tim's component, which is this, and we will now add in the custom section. Once you've added in the GraphQL query into the index.js file, you've now added in the extra component you really needed to pull the data from your newly built out modular block. So I will save this and we'll move on to the next step. That next step is going to be building out the React component to be rendered on the front end. Inside the component section, we're actually going to have new file, and I'm going to name this custom section.js, and this will be our newest custom section component. And if I had the time, I would go through it and type it out for you, but I'm actually going to go back into our GitHub repository, scroll down to creating the React component. And as you can see here, the steps are documented for what I just did. You'll navigate to components folder, create a new file called custom section.js, and you will copy and paste the following into the file and save it. So here is the code for the custom section that you'll need. So I'm just going to copy this and go up here. We'll go back into our code. I will copy in the custom section.js component. I will click save. And now we have a custom section that is built out. It's ready to be rendered. All we really have to do now is render that component with every other component that has been built. So to do that, once you save this piece, we'll move into the render components section. And inside here, you can see that we have an iteration to go through and find out what components are available and then render out that React component. So if we go back into the documentation and I'll scroll down, the last part of this is actually rendering the custom section modular block. And this custom section is that one piece that we just built out inside of Contentstack. So as I said, we'll navigate into the render components.js, and we will add that new custom section React component to our page. So we have line numbers that should help kind of guide where this should be inserted. So I'm actually going to take this piece right here, go to the top of there and see on line 12, I will now import that custom section component that we just created on here on the left. I will go back, and it says on line 30, insert the following code. So this section right here, this conditional if, will just say if the component is found from the JSON payload, render out the React component that we just built. So I will copy this, and right here, I will copy it in. So now we can say, when we're getting the data and we iterate through it, if the component is found, render it along with all these other components. And I will now save this file, go back, and as you see, it can save the file. And once you recompile your Gatsby app, the changes should be shown from that new modular block that you just built out and the new code that you just added to the project. So I go back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to type in npm run develop, and I will hit enter. We'll let it go and do its build process. And now you can see that there was success building the development bundle. I will move back to the project that we've just created. I will go back to the home page. So it still has our cool color changes and the text that we've rendered earlier. We've done rearranging of these blocks, so you can see how easy it is to change layouts. And also, I forgot to publish the content, so let me go back and do that actually. So once you've actually built out that content, I didn't publish the newest component. I don't believe so, or maybe I did. Sorry, just a second, let me see. All right. And it should pop up right here. So this is the Gatsby Conference custom section modular block that we have just created. It's so fancy, it's so fun, and it's something that you just built very easily within Contentstack. And now all your users from here on out can actually just keep adding this piece in if they need more of these. It's awesome. You can see that if I click on the call to action, it'll actually redirect me to Contentstack's website, which was the call to action that we created. So everything is linked in properly. If I go back to the page and just look at what pieces come from where, you can see that the title is Gatsby Conference Custom Section. The description is a new awesome component that I built in Contentstack. And you can see all the content is readily available for you on your front end. And it's that easy.
So just a few things about what Nick just showed you guys. One, you have total authority over the structure of those individual blocks, right? So one of the things that you can do that was pointed out in chat is if you want that block to be reusable, we have something called global fields. So you can create a set of fields and then just deploy that into any modular section that you want. So you build it once, maintain it in one place, and in effect, that gives you the sort of knowledge that that will never change, right? So it's not like you have to worry about, oh, we want to make an update. I'm going to go and make that update on 10 different, sort of modular page types or content types. But you can then do that from sort of a single place as well. Yes, Contentstack is a fully SaaS hosted solution. So we are hosted up in the magical cloud with data centers around the world. And more importantly than our data centers being everywhere, we have access to all of our APIs through our CDN as well. So it's not just that you get, sort of dispersed data, but you also get to cache the output of those API calls. And when I say you get to, I mean, we're going to do that for you. So when you call an API once, the result of that API query is then cached on all of the different edge servers as well. So in terms of extreme performance, it's really going to hit those kind of use cases that you have.
Awesome. I hope that demo or that workshop really kind of helped highlight what Contentstack can do from just the scratching the surface. Obviously, there is a lot more depth we can get into, but for today's workshop, hopefully that just lets you, take a little dive into what we can do and how easy it is to do that.
Cool. So what we're going to do now is, if there are no questions, while I'm talking, guys, feel free to drop any questions that you need. Or actually, why don't we take a quick break at this point? I'm sure people might need to hit the loo or go grab a fresh cup of coffee or a beer, whatever time zone you're in. I mean, we're covering, I think, a total of 14 hours of time zone just between the three of us here. So yes, you're very welcome for the break. I'm sure it is well deserved. So again, thank you guys for sticking around so long so far. And I think the best part is about yet to come, which is when Tim is going to show us how we can do some incredible things at scale super easily as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that. We will take a quick break, and let's go ahead and throw a timer up on the screen.
So that was quite the intro, Nick. I better deliver now.
Right? Well, after that screenshot in our side conversation, Tim.
Oh my God, I'm done. Sorry, guys, this is an internal joke, but this is the worst autocomplete of my life just happened in our chat. Anyway, other Nick, you'll see it.
I'll check it out later.
That's Nick Barron for the screenshot. Anyways, go have a little break, because for me it's almost 8 in the evening. I might have a beer myself, but after, better. I'll be back in a sec.
Same as well. I'm going to use the restroom.
Just to let you know, Danielle, we prefer the term Nick squared. It's going to be our sort of power couple name. We're replacing Brangelina or whatever. That's actually the extent of my pop culture knowledge right there. Did we provide a link to use Contentstack for the demo? We certainly did up at the front. Someone should have those links handy to drop in for you.
Oh, I'm so ready to personalize stuff, guys. It's crazy.
I mean, what's the point of super fast content delivered over an incredible infrastructure if it's not in the moment and relevant to who I am and what I'm doing?
There you go. That's the best marketing sentence I've heard in a while. Kind of true also.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, what's your favorite kind of beer? What are you hopping to later today?
So I am Dutch, right?
Uh-huh.
But I really don't like Heineken. Like, really, we don't. We like in Amsterdam we have the canals, right? And we call it canal water. It's really not the thing you drink.
Uh-huh.
Even though it's in your country, it's pretty expensive, right? So
it is an import here.
Sorry?
It's an import here, so yeah.
Exactly. For us, it just flows down the taps. No, it's what I like is something called grols, which is like one of the hardest words in Dutch. Let me just type it in the chat. It's crazy hard to even say. I don't even know how to say it in my language. And it's made in the South a little bit more. And I'm a musician, and they kind of marketed this towards musicians and the stuff you drink when you go to a concert. It's like those little bit bigger bottles, and then when you open it, it has like a big pop, and the cap stays on. I'm not sure. It's pretty famous, I guess. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the stuff I like mainly. But now I live in France, so it's really hard to find it. But for now, we'll stick with water.
There we go.
Tony Field, you know grols in Canada. Nice. Yeah, so Heineken is pretty expensive on your end, right? Okay, 1 minute left.
All right.
So Matt Morris, that's actually a good question about the React HTML parser. But the moment it becomes Jamstack, it's probably a lot less dangerous. Of course, there's always XXS options, right? But it's much easier that way. If it's an actual dynamic SSR, it's different. Oh, Brandon, don't drink Heineken in Belgium, dude. No. They will not. No. Yeah, the triple Carmelite is very nice. Yes. For me, the Belgian stuff is a little too heavy. It's almost like eating a sandwich when you drink a beer. Okay, I guess it's time.
Awesome. Now for the really exciting stuff.
Well, let's say it's 50-50. How about that?
I'll settle for that.
Exactly. Okay, let's see if I can share my screen. That would be nice. So now that I'm sharing like this, I can actually not see the chat. So if there's anything, guys, just shout and I'll try to answer. So let's kick this off. So I work at Uniform. And so what we'll be talking about today is personalization, but on a Jamstack website, which is kind of crazy, right? Because it's supposed to be static. But we actually found a way to do this properly. And also that's why there's this subtitle that we create relative personalized experiences. Because you know what? Personalization is actually really hard. And it's not often relevant because you kind of need scale and performance and speed to actually make it feel seamless. And that's not an easy thing to do. So that's what I'm trying to show you here today. So just a little bit about me, not too much, because we're just going to go and dive into the cool stuff, you know, out of the slides into the code. So if you have any questions, you can find me at my name at Twitter, or you can see stuff on YouTube that I do. And apparently you can also call me Nick. I just learned that, which is all good. And of course, if you like Uniform, after this, I hope you do, you can also find Uniform on Twitter and the website. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff there. So this is a fun fact that I learned when I joined this company recently. As it turns out, when you personalize your website, on average, there's 19% more conversion. And you know what? That's a pretty big deal. So I thought I would put it on the slide pretty big. Is imagine if you have a million visitors, right? And they all have to buy something. If your conversion is 19% higher than your previous year, that's a pretty big increase. So keep that in mind. Yes, I had to find some sort of GIF to represent this. I thought this would be it. So let's talk about the current state of personalization, because you know what? It's actually pretty hard to do, right? So personalization often requires an origin, right? And this impacts performance. So what I mean by this is when you go to the world of the best of suite products, like the big systems out there, like not the not headless systems. If you want to do personalization with those, you kind of need to reach the origin, fetch data from the server, onload, and do a whole bunch of stuff. And that's just really slow, because what you want to do is you click the page and it's there. And that's just not always true, because first of all, if you have to connect to the origin all the time to get data, that's slow on its own. That's why we have headless CMSs with Jamstack websites, right? But if you then also need to do personalization, it's challenging. And of course, nowadays, when you look at the market and how it's all segmented, there's a lot of different technologies you have to utilize to actually put it in. Some is backend, some is front end. There's all this whole mix. So you need a lot of skills. And to actually learn everything, it just takes a long time to actually do stuff. And so I hope today to show you that it can also be much faster. Because I need to share this, because one of the Nicks told me, Tim, tell the people this. I did everything you see here in one day, and I hadn't used the tool before because I'm pretty new at the company. So keep that in mind. And also getting started is it's a showstopper. It's really challenging. And a lot of developers haven't actually gotten the chance to do personalization because it's just so hard to get started with. And then there's this other magical thing, which is called AI. And you're right, I know there's a bunch of companies figuring out AI for personalization based on behavior. But you know what? You need really good data for that. You need a lot of time and resources to actually get that to work. And in the meantime, it's actually not that good. And that might not be what you want to show to your end user, right? So, like I alluded to before, personalization is kind of the opposite of performance because you have to do all these things on the server to get it done, right? It's pretty hard to have both. So this is kind of my fancy graph for the day. So you have more performance on the bottom end, but you also have a higher bounce rate and lower traffic. But when you do personalization with kind of weird hyphenation there in the here, you actually do get 19% more conversion. But that kind of, it's a versus story rather than it combining. So what if we could have both? This is kind of a strange gift, but I felt like my colleague had this one of like, I'm just going to put it in. So let's talk about Jamstack personalization. Right, so this is kind of generally how personalization works. And the ideas with this slide is, let's say we have built a conference website, right? There are different users that visit the website for the conference, right? You have the intent to sign up for marketing talks. Maybe there's a marketing track, and maybe there's a developer track. It's more, techie, nerdy stuff. You might be a visitor with the intent to sign up for developer talks. And then there's also other intents like I am a speaker. I want to actually submit a talk and go through the call for papers email. And so there's all these different things. So there are different people with different intents, and we want to personalize for these people. And so these intents actually have signals, and that's how we figure out what the user is doing and how we figure that out, right? So basically, can I remove this? Yes. So let's say there's a visitor with the intent to submit a talk. We need to figure out the signaling of how that works to actually show them the relevant content. And so there are different signals, right? We can have behavior. So you go to a page or you click something, we track it. There could be, let's say, a link in an email with a UTM campaign query parameter. We can track that. There can also be you visited somewhere, you bought a ticket, let's say, you go away and we set a cookie. And when you come back, we know because of the cookie that you actually did something, so we can personalize for you. And this is only some of the signaling that we can use to figure out what we should show you, right? So let's talk a bit about how it works. So we have an intent that gives a signal. So this is a little React hook that tracks the behavior of a user. In this case, this is for behavior tracking, not the other guys. And then based on the signal, it shows you a personalized component, right? This is a very simplified way. And then, so what we have is, of course, this personalized component has different variations, because if you are a new customer or an existing customer, we want to show you different things. And this is when I show you Contentstack, how it's set up, right? There's one wrapper component, and then there are subcomponents, and that's the stuff that we show you, but we query all of them. And then on the client side, we figure out, okay, which of the version do we show you? And how that works, I'll show you in a sec. So one more thing is we can actually personalize at server-side render, right? So the React server-side rendering, we can do it with client side on hydration, and we can do it at the edge with edge workers. So you don't even need JavaScript, and it can still personalize for you. How that all works specifically is not for today. We only have half an hour. Like, there's so much to unpack here. Let's not go too far. So a little bit of the code, I put that in the slides, and I'll show you. So we actually put a context provider, that's a React approach to stuff, around the website, so we kind of know what's happening with the tracker, right? So your layout, as you might have seen in your starter kit, is just the normal layout, and we can add the SEO component and all your other stuff, right? So what we have done, we put the uniform tracker around it. And then it has a tracker instance, and that tracker instance can do a bunch of stuff. It can look at cookies, it can look at query strings and behavior. And for now, we only do behavior to keep it simple. And then we have a component that we call Personalize. And Personalize is kind of a smart component because you give it the variations and it knows about the intents and the signals. And then based on all of that you have as a user, it will show you the right variant. Right, so it's literally this simple. We have a Personalize with some variations and the component it needs to show to give the props to, right, from that variation that you got from your CMS. You can also take a bit more control and go a bit more crazy. This is a little bit more like the Vue.js approach, right, where you can have slots. And here you can actually choose to do, if it's variation number 1, we show 5 things. If it's not personalized, we might not show it at all. And then you have a little bit more control.
Hey, Tim. We have a question. I don't know if you want to answer really quick.
Yeah, shoot.
What does it mean to personalize a SSR?
Yeah, so SSR is if you are running dynamically, basically, if it's not Jamstack. So we can basically on server-side render, look at all the stuff that we have collected and then personalize for you. And that might not be the full answer. And so that's why, because I'm still pretty new, right? So we have my colleagues in the chat that can go super deep on this if you have specific questions. So we have, I think we have Alex and Adam who are like full on, they actually built the whole thing. So if you have a question specific, go for them, please. So I'll continue this for the other people that are still watching. Was there anything else, Nick, or are we good?
We're good to go.
Okay. So, are you ready to see some stuff burn due to the demo effect?
Let's do it.
Let's do it, right? So let me just show you first the website itself, which is this guy. So you are now hopefully intimately familiar with this whole thing because you've been hacking at it during this whole workshop, right? But in this case, there's a little thingy here that's new. I added this yesterday. And so now how we set it up is it's relatively simple because we didn't have that much time. So what we have now is there's actually a little component here that looks at the signaling, right? Because of my behavior. And so right now it says, hey, this is the first time you're visiting this website. Read some blog posts to see my content change. So what we did is we actually added some behavior to some of the blog posts. In my case, this one, right? And how that is connected in Contentstack, we'll show you in a sec. I'm just demoing this thing now. So now I went to this blog post and there is behavior tracking in this blog post. So now when I go to the homepage, this thing just changed. You saw how fast that was. That's literally like hydration. So it had another version. It looked at whatever I told it to do, which is this blog post. It's tracked, and now this has changed. And we have a little tool here where you can see that. This tool is not out yet. It's still it's still in beta or maybe alpha. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. But I will use this to show you a little bit because now we clicked on blog and it showed existing customer. So you can see the score here is 50. But when we go to the next blog post, this one, and now we check it, you can see they are both 50, but this one is still winning. So now when I just refresh this page, so I went here again, basically. Now we check and you see that the new customer is now winning. And when you go to the homepage, now there is a new customer. And currently this is behavior tracking. So when you want to remove this again, you just clear your storage. And we refresh. And now it doesn't know me anymore. I go here, I go to a page, and it knows me, right? So this is really simple basics. So if there's any questions, please shout, and some of the Nicks can tell me what to do. So let's have a look at how we set this up in Contentstack. And the time is flying, right? Because there's a whole bunch to unpack here. So that's why I'm not going to be coding like Nick was just doing, so you can code along because there's a little bit too much to go for. However, I will show you in the code how it works. And if it's something is not clear or you want more details, you can shout. So let's have a look at how we did this inside Contentstack. Right, so basically let's first start with how we track people. So as you heard before, we actually have an extension. And that extension is called intent tags, which is this one. And it comes from Uniform. So intent tags is custom field. and it listens to our API, the Uniform API. So when you now go to a block entry and you find this Modern Cloud Ecosystem block, you guys have this too, so you can click and actually see it. And then when you scroll down, there's actually our uniform field here. This is the custom field that we made. And as you can see, there's existing customer here. We tagged it, right? And so there you can also make it new customer. That's the other one that we created. How those are created, I'll show you right after this. So if you visit this page, the Modern Cloud Ecosystem, we know as uniform, our tracker knows, hey, this is existing customer. So let's do something with that. The same goes for if you go to the other block entry, which was the next one, this one, I think. Now it says new customer, right? So the block knows about those intent tags. And when you query the block in your GraphQL, you also query the intent tag and you give that in your code to the tracker. So our JavaScript is aware of where you were. So, but what we have seen is actually on the homepage, there's this thing that keeps on changing, right? So when we go there, we actually have something we called a personalized component.
We got some questions.
Well, you can have
to...
Yeah, shoot. Oh wait, I might be able to see it myself. Oh, that's Inception. Wait, look, I'll go back.
One of them is, does this break with browser no trackers?
Ooh, that's a really good question. We are using IndexedDB or cookies or stuff like that. To know that specifically, I think one of our tech guys is definitely able to answer that one. I hadn't thought of that. That's a really good question because I personally actually have that turned on. So I would also learn a little bit if my colleague could answer that one. Is there another one?
Yeah, it says, can you use this like with any platform? Do you have to use it with Contentstack or Contentful or?
Actually, if you go to uniform.dev, you'll see there's a whole bunch of integrations there because right now we're looking at Gatsby, right? But we also have Next.js, we have Nuxt, we have a whole bunch of like vanilla. There's like, it's a relatively simple plugin. So it's for us, it's just how to integrate with the systems and run with it. So if you go to uniform.dev, you'll learn about that. So we have this personalized component for the homepage. And inside, you will see that there are 3 versions. These are the 3 we just saw on the page, right? So when you go on the page, you say, hey, you're an existing visitor. It basically says this. So based on the tracking of what we followed, right, with the code, it chose this one. And so when you open this one, you can actually see there is also an intent tag here and it says existing customer. So now you can see where we actually follow and track the user. We have an intent tag, so we know what to save to do an action on. And then when we want to show something, this is one of the options that we can show, it also has the intent tag, so it can kind of cross-reference, right? So it knows what to show based on the scoring of the behavior. And so what we've done on the homepage, you have this lovely box here. So I just added one here, right? And in my case, in my stack, that's on the 2nd place. But of course, you can also just put it to the 3rd and publish, and this will move down. This is just a normal component. And so what we do is we actually query the personalized component, which on its own has the variations. And then in the code, we tell this personalized React component that we have, look, these are the variations. You choose what to show based on those intended tags. So let's see what other things. So this is the data modeling in Contentstack. And I know I went fast, but we don't have that much time. So how about I show you now in Uniform how we set up those intent tags. So this is my personal account. And then you see here, I have a site called Contentstack Gatsby Starter. So when you open this, you can actually set up these intents, right? And so we have existing customer, and we're using behavior tracking here. So you click on a link and we track you. And you can set up some strengths for this. So we might say existing customer is a stronger one, so we rate it higher when you click on it. And then you can also say new customer. But what if we just want a completely different one, right? So we can actually say, oh, let's call it student, whatever, it just came up here. Students only. Cool, here we go. So now we created a new intent for a user that might be a student and gets Contentstack for free, something like that, right? So let's again just say, okay, we're just checking behavior. Now we have tracking behavior for a student. And let's publish this now. So now our API has everything. Before we are able to run that in the code, I'll first show you what it looks like in Contentstack, right? So let's go back to our Personalize component, and we can actually add another entry here. And we call this a customer type, so it's kind of fixed to that. So we only want these components. And so this is a student. And the intent tag, there we go, student. I see I have two intent tag fields. This is my bad. You won't have that, but I'm just going to put both. So I know for a fact that we will actually be tracking this. So let's save. So you guys have gone through all those actions, right? So we're now going to have to publish this. So Nick was teaching you before. That's why I'm going a little bit faster now. So I think just to be safe, I'm going to publish both because I'm not exactly sure where I'm loading this from. And while we save, I'm going to just check if I have some messages. No, we're good. This is so surprising, right? From Contentstack, it already published. This is too fast. I couldn't actually check my messages. Anyway, so we created this student customer type now. So if we now go to the, oh wait, we still need a blog post to actually track the fact that you're a customer or a student. And I think we didn't actually add something here yet. So let's here add student and say publish. So now our blog post about robotics has something about students. So what we do have to do, and this is where a little bit of magic is happening, why this is all working in Jamstack, because what we actually do is, of course, when we build the website, we query all those variations. We have everything. But we also need to know on build all the intents that can exist. And that needs to come from our API here. So what we have, and now it goes a little bit more crazy, when you do npm start rather than npm develop, you can see that I do develop uniform. And here it says generate intents. I hope the text is big enough. I'll just zoom it a little. And what this guy does, it actually queries our API. And then what it does, it goes and adds this file here, right? So these are all our intents. So when we do this on build, we actually have all intents and all signals, and we have all the variations. So it's very easy on hydration to just put those things together and personalization happens. So what we'll have to do is actually restart it again. Now you can see here, actually loading this now from our end. So this is actually our API. And then when we open this file again, when it's done, yes, it's done. There's actually student here now. So now the code base knows everything. Now for the grand reveal, let's have a look if this has actually worked. What we should do though is actually clean everything. So we're sure that what we're doing is actually working. And okay, so let's go to the blog, and we connected it to the robotics, didn't we? But I don't see it. That's interesting. Ah, there it is. For some reason it was there. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. So I just refreshed it. Let's see if this guy has picked it up. No, that's why it's in beta. Yeah, sorry about that. Let's see if it worked. It actually hasn't worked. Welcome to the demo effect. Did I publish everything? I think I did. Let's see if I go to this one, and then it actually works. Okay, I know time is flying and we don't have much longer. It would have been so awesome if this has worked. It could be because this is an archived blog or something.
Can you do a rebuild, Tim? Cms rebuild.
Yeah, I might have. Yeah, I might have to just get the GraphQL stuff, and I might also have to publish the block entry again. I'm not so sure. Let's go. And the intent tag is there. Let's publish. Just to be safe. Publish. Oh, you know what? We might have to. Well, it is published, but let's be safe. And I'm assuming it also published the sub items now, right? Okay. And then we also have the homepage that might have changed. So let's just be safe and publish everything. In a real environment, you might not have to do this because then you would know what you're doing. Here we go. And then this was also published because we had it in our page. Okay, so let's refresh. And we can actually do a little bit of debug if we wanted to, and actually zoom this in. And here are some of the signals, and it actually doesn't get the signal now. It has been rebuilt, right? No, it doesn't get it. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you just see it fail. That's not what we want. Let's go back to the slides. So basically, if you wanted to and go and fiddle yourself, you can actually go to uniform.app and create your own thing. And what you can do, this is something I'll quickly show you. You can create an API key in here. So we can go to the settings. Oh, that's not the right one. In the settings, you will have API keys, and you can create one for Contentstack, right? So you can copy this guy, and you can go then to Contentstack and then extensions, go to the intent text field that you added, and add your own API key here. And then suddenly, through magic, you can do your own intents and fiddle around with everything. That's the only connection, and that's it. So I really want to thank you for bearing with me. And sadly, the demo effect happened, but you can actually go on Twitter and find us and go to the website. And the same goes for me. So if you want to shout at me for not making it work, or you want to call me Nick, you can actually reach out to my Twitter. And also, you can check out my YouTube for a whole bunch of content around this coming soon, but there's also a whole bunch of other stuff. Beware, it's quite Vue related, not React. So if you're one of those who doesn't like Vue, it might be a bit scary. That's it for me, guys. Thank you very much.
Excellent work, Tim. Even with a little bit of the demo effect. And it did look like Cam was saying you might not have published within Uniform.
I actually have.
Okay.
Well, let me quickly show, because you know what? If I didn't, we might get it to work. And we still have like 10 minutes, right? Let's go.
And I guess the other thing, while Tim's getting that,
it's cool.
Oh, no,
you continue
with that. I was just going to point out that you guys also have the uniform code in your starter site that you downloaded.
It is there.
The API keys are loaded in there as well. So if you simply add that component onto the homepage or any of the modular block-based pages, you'll start seeing that personalization as well. You can even look at some of the blog pages that you have to see which ones are flagged for new customer versus old customer, so that you guys can actually see personalization in effect on your own static site generated pages, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, every client we talk to about Jamstack that is a little bit like on the more enterprisey end, every single one, even when I worked at agency, asked about personalization. We're always like, oh boy, that is a hard question. Oh shit. Oh boy. And so now that I joined this company, I saw it in place. I'm like, oh, what? We can actually do it? Because the funny thing is, as a developer, you don't really think about it because it's so hard. Because in your MVP build in the sprint, it just doesn't fit. But as you could see, like, if I hadn't failed this, I actually did personalization in this half an hour. Imagine if that had worked, right? So it can be that fast. So in the background, I'm still going to try to see if it works. Oh, it works. No.
All right, let's
Why?
back up. You can show it.
Oh, look. So let's try that again. We go to the ecosystem, and then let's just reload this a bunch of times. So this should now change on the homepage, right? So now it's existing visitor. Let's try to get it to student. So now we go to the blog, and then the one about robotics. So now we visited once. So let's check in the console, where we are. So student is now 250, and existing customer is also 250. Let's just refresh this guy one more time. And now when we look at the scoring, student is 300 and existing is 250. So now when we go home, you are in fact a student. So it's pure magic, because I thought I published, but of course, our architect is always right. So I republished, and here we go.
Excellent. Well, I guess we will certainly open up the floor now to see if you guys have any sort of in-depth questions or any discussion points that you want us to pick up to, talk through, explain, bounce some ideas off, anything along those kind of lines. So yeah,
I'm open to talk a bit more. If you guys want to follow us or go on Twitter and actually spam us, it's all good. I guess the Nicks don't mind either. I might have just destroyed. Anyways, I'll stop. Yeah, so Lars, our CEO, is in the chat just now, and he actually posted a video. So if you're into having a bit of an overview on how this actually works, more curated, go to the video and check it out.
Awesome, Jedediah. Glad to hear that you're going to check us both out. That's great to hear. And also for everyone that may have joined late or wasn't able to go through the full demo or workshop with us, like I said before, we still have the GitHub repo with all the steps needed to recreate the workshop example that we went through, and it should have the custom personalized content with uniform and everything in there.
Let's jam on the stack.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, the crickets just happened.
Yesterday.
Let's see if there's some more questions we might be able to answer. Nathan, that's a fun question because I know Prismic actually really well. Let's see. I think Contentstack has a bit more flexibility, as in enterprisey features like really easy import, export, data modeling. Like there's all these extra things that they do, which is really awesome. And so it's kind of fun for the Nicks because I have an outside perspective on this, right? And so when I use it, it's like super fast and it works so well. And you know what? Prismic is one of my favorites. My own website is built on it. It works really well as well. It's a little more simple. And it doesn't have all the crazy integrations, like the easy extension I just added for the intent tags. It is possible in Prismic, but it's not like their priority. So they're more like a one-off system where Contentstack really connects to basically anything to fit in those bigger systems. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a good point, Tim. I mean, there's a lot of different content management systems. There seems like there's a new headless CMS popping up on a weekly cadence, and yeah, we all have specialties, right? We all do some things good, and there's other places where other folks do better in a particular category, right? It's all about due diligence and finding the right solution. And when I say solution, again, remember, think back to that big kind of ecosystem slide. It's not just about, I need a CMS. Nobody ever just needs a CMS. You need a CMS that's going to communicate with your personalization engine, that's going to work with, this platform and this platform and this platform. So it's really about being able to find what the best features are that you need for either yourself, your organization, or the clients that you're working on behalf of. And in terms of a question that just popped up about mapping data from WordPress into Contentstack, certainly it's something that we've done in the past. We've got that full-fledged content management API to make sort of that importing of content really easy. We can even upload info as import files as well, so we can do that.
Yeah, maybe I can chime in there a little more. Hopefully it's Quessy if I'm saying it right. Pardon me if I'm wrong. We actually have tools that can import your content or any content from WordPress into Contentstack built out. So it's simple as in plugging in API keys and just letting it run it and do its thing. But if it's outside of WordPress, it's still pretty simple. You know, it's just formatting the data to be in a JSON payload that's understandable for Contentstack, and it matches a schema that you're building. So it's not too hard to migrate from any other data platform.
And Ron just dropped one of the articles about moving from WP into CS.
You know, the thing that stood out to me when using Contentstack is that you have so many different options. Like you can go with the reference field to add a component, which is the style I'm used to. But you can also do with like what we saw on the homepage with those little tabs to have components a bit like that. So you can still reorder them, but you can define their fields. But in there, you can also, again, do a reference field. That's what we did for personalization. Or you can just go page-based and add a couple of fields. And so to me, that flexibility really is a game changer. I'm not sure if everybody thinks that way, but I'm used to working on sites that are so large that the smallest thing that you cannot do becomes a huge problem. And so with this, it's super flexible.
Yeah, let's see. We have another question from Alton. For most cases, would you suggest Content for Contentstack as a general rule of thumb? Well, I may be biased. I'm going to say Contentstack because this is the workshop. Maybe we'll let Tim answer that question a little more, and then, or we could just move on from that question.
Oh, that's a dangerous place for me to say anything about that. But you know what? Like the other Nick said, there's a place for all of it, right? And there's a bunch of people talking about sanity also. All of them have like their own approach to things. I think Contentful was kind of the first, and they were a little bit limited, and now they're going full force ahead with a whole bunch of stuff. I think Contentstack was like flexible as crazy out of the box. And then Sanity is much more for developers rather than content editors. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's all over the map.
Yeah, there's a tool for everyone, and you know, you just have to find what's right for you.
I kind of jump between. Like I've used a lot. I also used Sitecore and these other guys, so I kind of have been all around. And the one issue you see very often, and that's a hard thing to solve, is the content editing experience with like preview, right? Because it's headless. How do you do that? And then you see a lot of these companies, for example, Prismic, but I think Contentstack might jump in there at one point, where you can kind of have an SDK in your code. And due to that, you can do really nice inline editing off your website. Like Storyblock, for example, is by far, it's like they're super ahead with this. That's like their only thing they did, because their code is basically the SDK in your own code, makes the CMS understand it with props and whatever. And you can basically, when you edit your page, you're editing your own website, but it's a headless CMS. But there's a pretty tight coupling to that SDK, of course. But they did that pretty well. And I think that's also a very interesting approach to stuff.
Yeah. All right. We have a question from Matt Morris saying, what kind of limits does Contentstack have on the amount of content? How many type stacks pages before you start to bump up against performance problems? Hey, Matt. Well, I'm not sure if you were here from the beginning of our presentation with the slide deck, but we don't really face too many performance issues. As Nick Barron had mentioned earlier, we distributed content out to Blizzard and Activision for their BlizzCon event, and we're reaching over 1 billion API calls, and we didn't even notice till after the event. So there isn't really any performance that comes with scaling with the amount of content that you create.
Yeah, so and this is one of the sort of the big differentiators, right, is Contentstack was architected for auto scaling. And I know everybody's going to say things like that, right? But that's in our DNA. When we started putting all of the framework together to build out the platform, our goal wasn't just we need to have a bunch of features. We need to have something that can explode with Black Friday sales, with, you know, massive international conventions and all these kind of insane things, right? And it can't just do that, but it has to do that times how many every languages and locales you have, times how many different properties that you have. So that was sort of the first thing that was ever put together from sort of a priority perspective internally. And that is just what's allowed us to, you know, make these kind of kind of ridiculous statements of, oh, we'll run into, you tell me when we run into performance problems because we haven't got there yet, and things along those lines. So it's definitely something that's integral to the way that we've architected every part of the solution going forward, because we've always been an enterprise level content management system, right? It's not just sort of something that you kind of spin up, but it's there for the long haul and to really grow with organizations. And it's one of the neat things that we see once we get in and are, there's a project where Contentstack is really kind of grown and taken over. It just then sort of explodes out from one project to another, and then all of a sudden you have all these different connected channels, devices, touch points, all leveraging the same sort of repositories from our side of things. So it's just a little bit of me being a bit of a fanboy about where I work, because it's pretty great. And I think one last thing I would just love to kind of point out in terms of why a lot of people are happy with us. I would actually say go and talk to some of our customers, right? If you're going to get very biased opinions from a guy who has a logo on his shirt, right? But I would point out that we last year, during from February to February, that's our financial year, we had 100% retention of our customers during a pandemic, right? So I think if you start thinking about what that means in terms of, is it a good platform to use? Like the old reading rainbow adage for any of my North American friends, right? Don't take our word for it. Let those kind of numbers kind of speak to yourselves. And yes, Matt, it would be super cool to be able to show you guys what sits behind our super proprietary platform and engine, but unfortunately, we're going to keep that for ourselves. So
I think you see that also, but yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about it. I can show you some diagrams, but it's never the same, is it?
Let's see. In our opinion, what is the best use case scenario for Contentstack? E-commerce, news, etc. I honestly feel that Contentstack can pretty much support any use case. Obviously, if it's a smaller project like a personal website, or just you're not getting a ton of traffic to, maybe Contentstack might be a little overkill for it. But if you're a growing and scaling company, Contentstack can support you from the ground up, from when you're small to when you're a very large enterprise company. There isn't really a limit on what we can and can't support.
And to also answer that, right, because you called out e-commerce specifically. So, we work with some of the, we work with people like Lego and shop.lego.com specifically, right? So it was one of their kind of examples. So that's a huge e-commerce implementation, and they're using a headless e-commerce platform. So much in the same way that Lars was able to go in and select his intent from a piece of content within our platform, you can do that from a product mapping perspective as well, right? So if I'm editing some cool marketing content and I want to pull in product information from an ERP or a e-commerce engine, that's what those custom fields, and that's what that ease of integration is all there to do, is to seamlessly connect those two different platforms. Nick might be a content editor, other Nick, and he might not have the wherewithal or even the access to go into something like a commerce tools or a big commerce or whatever and actually manipulate that information, but he can get it. He can select that item by reference, by ID, and then the front end is going to do its magic in terms of kind of throwing that stuff out. So that's just one example for e-commerce. But if you think about, if you have, a publication management tool for something like news, or if you have, membership derived sites and you need to connect into those systems, that's what this mock approach, the whole ecosystem play allows for the content management system to interact with those different platforms as well and really lift that whole experience and performance up a notch.
Mm-hmm. And I believe we were talking to the point about like what CMSs are like the better CMSs or the easier ones to use. And it all comes down to how easy is that UI for you, for your content creators, for your marketers. It's all about that UI experience. And like we really thrive on making it easy enough that you can go in there and know exactly what you're doing. So when it comes to best use case, Contentstack has a very intuitive UI. It's really easy to manipulate and manage that content for all those different scenarios. Tim, looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I'm going to have to defer to my colleagues.
Yeah, good.
I do know that there's a whole bunch of analytics integrations, but there you go. Cam is actually replying. Yeah, so really our architecture is made to, because we play in the enterprise arena, right? Where everything, if you want to be successful, you need to be able to connect with stuff. That's why Contentstack has success there as well. So all our architecture is also based on that. That's why it's relatively easy for us to make yet another starter kit if we wanted to use this exact thing with Gritsum or Nuxt. That is also pretty easy to set up. Or just native vanilla JavaScript. That's a fun one. Also works. Still exists.
Does it? I haven't seen.
I might be old. I sometimes.
That's all right. I was trying to explain to somebody what a static site generator was, and I made the mistake of referencing some of the first web projects that I had worked on when the entirety of the internet was static, and they they didn't believe me. So
you can do Jamstack without the J, no problem. You just use Ruby or some shit. Remember GitHub Pages back in the day? Was Jekyll. There you go.
Dreamweaver. I'm with you, Cam. That was everybody under the sun thought that they were a marketing genius when Dreamweaver came out, and that was going to revolutionize the world. And I think it did to some degree, right? It allowed
really made
a front-end developer. Fireworks.
I remember Fireworks too, Dan. It kind of felt like, because when you just start out and you're a bit younger, that code is still a bit, far-fetched. But when you can actually then see it in Dreamweaver or whatever, the output was horrendous. But we were actually seeing what we were doing. And now comes with Vim, and then we know we cannot win anymore.
No.
I don't even have any experience in Dreamweaver. I barely know what that is. It's before me.
and that's why if we were channels, you'd be Nick Jr.
There I am. I am Nick Jr.
Yeah, there was also the world of Flash. Like, I used to work on this huge project that started as Flash because they were in the luxury sphere, so it had to be like super fancy. And they were like, oh crap, we need a mobile website now. We're talking a long time ago, right? And so that mobile website then stayed when Flash died, and that became the big website that almost didn't work on mobile anymore. And then 10 years later, you still have developers crying over jQuery 1.7 bugs and all of that shit. Man, I'm really happy that we managed to actually go to a headless CMS on that one and change it all up. But yeah, some projects run that long. It's still up and running. It was like, I think they started 15 years ago. When I started coding, they started this project. It's like, what? Cold Fusion. Oh boy, you give me chills. This is all.
Just me over here being Nick Jr. Like, what's Cold Fusion?
Dude, you don't need to know. Like,
what is Fireworks?
Do you know what ASP is?
Yes, I know what ASP is.
Oh, you know what? With code behinds and stuff, remember that? When we didn't have MVC yet? That's more the thing. Oh, boy.
I remember going through my first developer training for a content management company, right? And they started talking about that you had this ASPX page, and then you had the ASPX.VB, and it took me a solid 2 days to realize that these things were like intrinsically connected. One was the presentation tier, and the other was the functionality. I was way out of my depth. It was.
Remember, wasn't that the same with XSLT and stuff?
Oh yeah. Oh god, I had many a sleepless nights over trying to debug an XSL file that just had a comma where you shouldn't have had one or something, and no error messages.
And it didn't like the fact that it was not HTML, right? Because you had a strict mode that you didn't know about. Oh my god! Oh, so yeah. Nick Jr., we felt some pain that you haven't.
Oh, IE5. Oh no. Internet Explorer. I can't believe that was a thing, right?
Well, now it's Safari, so it's all good.
Awesome. We're definitely coming to a wrap here. We have about 5 minutes left. So
yeah, I think we've kind of denigrated down into nostalgia. So
yeah, exactly. Time for kind of discussion.
to sort of wrap things up, I just want to thank all of you guys that are still here, kind of hanging out and having a little bit of a chit chat with us. Thank you all for your good questions. That makes our job on this side of the camera that much more enjoyable and engaging. Nothing's worse than just kind of preaching at a screen a little bit. So yeah, thank you guys. And you stuck around for 2.5 hours. So you get a congratulations all yourself.
Exactly. With people left, you guys are diehards. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure, and it was really cool to see everyone super engaged and having fun. I was hoping it would be super like strict, but everyone was having a lot of fun. We cracked virtual beers and talked about beer talk, and it was a great overall workshop.
And remember, uniform.dev and contentstack.com. If you remember nothing else from this 2.5 hours, remember those.
That's it then. Thanks, everyone.
All right, awesome. Take it easy, guys. Have a good rest of the conference, and I'll see you guys over on the final stage later on to see the closing remarks.
Mm-hmm. Bye, everyone.
Cheers.